Welcome to Tech Leaders Today with your host, Cassie Crossley. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Now here's Cassie Crossley.
Welcome to Tech Leaders Today. I am here with Matt Heller, who is the founder and chairman of the company Browsium. Matt founded Browsium after spending several years working with Microsoft customers on Internet Explorer. There, he recognized the need for browser-related tools and solutions which enable business customers to more effectively manage their browser environment. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here. Can you tell me a bit more about this company you created? It's an interesting topic because people experience the different browsers. In fact, I run 3 pretty much every day. Tell me what you've created and why it's important to everyone.
It's a good and common question I often get. When I started working in the web space, actually, early 90s, almost even 90 itself. So I've been around for a long time, and things have evolved tremendously. For us, the issue is organizations rely on browsers. End users, such as yourself, not using 3, but end users in these organizations spend more than 90% of their time inside the browser. We're recognizing the need for IT to have the tools and techniques and technologies to control that experience from a user experience end on sort of the light touch, all the way through compliance, security, compatibility, and other critical IT functions that folks have been used to applying in a traditional end user desktop environment with installed packaged applications. And that's really what we're about. And where this came from initially was working with customers back in the days when I was with Microsoft, very early on the web, and we had essentially one web-based application for approximately every 12 installed, packaged, bundled executable applications. And so the whole concept was very different. Even as the web was somewhat teenage years in those days, it was gaining maturity. And now with the explosion of things, we're seeing only 10 years later, we're seeing approximately 16 web apps for every one installed web app. And so the entire world has shifted around. And what we're trying to help organizations first start to understand are the challenges of this different environment, and then deliver to them the tools that they need to solve those problems and be prepared for whatever tomorrow brings. And the web is an exciting and innovative place. We really don't understand what tomorrow's opportunities are yet. We understand the technologies that are going to get us there, but we don't know how exactly those are going to manifest themselves to create new opportunities and really to create new threats. And those are the kinds of things we think about all the time.
And to work in the kind of environments that you're looking at to be able to build the technology necessary, you must have a team. So tell me about that team, and do you attract, or are you worried about retention? Where are you at on that?
You know, as a software company, we're going to be heavily engineering based with lots of developers. And we have taken an approach a long time ago. Our great head of engineering comes from an Amazon, Microsoft background, very methodical and structural oriented. And he has instilled upon us a belief that we hire very senior, very qualified engineers. We have a rigorous hiring process where we end up with these folks who really have a broad range of skills across the board. And what that provides for us at the end of the day is not just a senior level experience and ownership, but it also provides the ability for us to use the various assets in different places. As a business owner, the value for us taking this approach is, should our employees take vacations, which we encourage, and have other things going on in life, we don't suffer as a business because other people can just pick up that slack and we don't have specialized individuals. From the employees themselves, I spent a lot of time talking with the developers. They love the fact that it enables them to switch portions of the product suite that they work on, work in new technology areas, so they don't get stale. They can invest in the areas that they really are super passionate about. And if they have something in mind or want to take a bit of a break, we can switch it around. As an agile shop, we have a 2-week sprint methodology. And so our team can really become very, very dynamic. And it really helps them stay fresh, stay focused, and constantly be eager to come in and do more. As we look for folks, that's the kind of stuff that we focus on. We're not putting out job recs saying, you know, this technology or that technology. That's important, obviously, that you know it. We really want to find folks who are that super smart caliber who can tackle problems if need be, learn a new language, that's fine, but it's not about being deep in that specific language per se, but deep in your mental aptitude and your desire to be a problem solver. That's sort of the core of this approach around the web itself. It's constantly evolving. We need to have people who are eager to evolve with it and see the new and next challenge, and don't just want to kind of sit back and say, I'm a Delphi person, or I'm a .NET person, and that's what I do. There's a time and space in the world for those folks, and that makes a ton of sense, but the kinds of things that we look for are a bit different.
It sounds like you've put a lot into the investment of not just bringing on the employees, but also that you provide versatile and flexibility and not being that single track. And I really appreciate that and can recognize that that'll keep people and retain people. They become engaged in what they're doing and motivated. I've been on those 2-year-long projects, and you don't have that excitement of a win very frequently. So I really am sensitive and appreciate the work that you're doing to keep the developers motivated. That's fantastic.
They drive the engine that is the products that we sell. And so we need to make sure that our investment in them is not a one-time item. And so we really do keep a big focus on that. We also have taken an approach to be diversified geographically in that while we have office space, we have very flexible work from home, and we encourage finding the best talent where they are and working around their environment, whether they're work from home, whether they want to do a co-working space. And we rely heavily on a virtual team that comes together, and they blend into that work-life balance that I think helps keep our employees happier day in and day out. It has paid huge dividends for us.
Well, do you follow Scrum methodology? Because it doesn't sound like everybody's co-located. So do you still have Scrum meetings? What do you find that by giving that flexibility, which I completely agree with, but you've got then the challenges, especially if you're trying to do 2-week sprints?
So we do daily stand-ups. The concept I had talked about earlier of finding those senior folks is one of the ways that we combat the potential pitfalls of a geographically spread team. Folks are absolutely self-starters, self-motivators, and can work well. We have access to the sort of typical shared productivity tools. We have regular access to video conferencing and chat and team collaboration and all of those things that make it a reality. And so the team is physically spread out. They are in direct contact as if they were in the next room right over, and that enables us to do it. But in the core, it really relies on folks to be disciplined and self-starters. I can't speak highly enough of the team that we have, the way that they operate. They really do drive what we do.
Yeah, I think that really makes a difference because people are self-starters, self-directed. They're not waiting for someone to give them a task for the day. And that's one of the advantages for that. They can just pull something out of the bucket, work on a new user story. So that sounds perfect. Let's take it to the technology itself, though. Are there initiatives? Are there areas that you're specifically focusing on? Or is there something with Browsium that you want to highlight? I'm interested in learning more.
Yeah, so we started as a company that was focused at the migration challenges. How do I get from one browser to another? How do I get from one version of the operating system to another, and a different sort of replatforming in that area? And it was very beneficial. The time was certainly right. There was lots of Windows operating system migrations. Browsers were iterating quickly. Over time, what we've been able to do is expand into the larger segment we have labeled browser management and sort of a subcomponent of end user management. The challenges aren't just about getting from one browser to another. The challenges really encompass security settings and operational management. They encompass dependency management. They encompass different multi-browser scenarios. You had mentioned earlier using 3 browsers. Many of our customers and folks that we talk to all the time embrace browser choice for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is the multitude of browser-based applications in one way or another will work better in one browser than another. Google tools will work better in Chrome, no surprise, than they will work in Microsoft products. SharePoint generally will work better in IE than it will work in non-IE browsers. And then there's just hard and fast things where we see lots of legacy technologies that require Internet Explorer, or modern technologies that will not work in older versions of Internet Explorer. And so those kinds of multi-browser challenges are things that we've been tackling for a while. The new area, and new to us, at least more than a year old, is really the discovery and analytics world in the browser-based, web-based application environment. Traditional desktop end user and network and environment management tools were built around this concept of installed executable applications. And those tools would reach into Windows and be able to describe and monitor everything about the way in which they interacted with the operating system. The browser, you can almost think about it as its own little mini operating system, in that the browser loads, and depending upon what a web application needs, the web resources it pulls in, it's dynamically loading and unloading things into memory. It's capable of compiling script in real time. It can load third-party extensions. You can interact with toolbars. And there's so much going on in there. And the traditional end-user desktop management tools only see the outer shell of that executable. They can't translate back the activity that's going on and understand what that looks like and be able to provide the correlative analytics that then drive the business to understand what you have to do there. Whether it's simple scenarios that we often talk about, Java, Reader, Flash, you name it, kind of third-party pieces that are used for lots of applications. As much as the rumors of Java's death are reported, they're greatly exaggerated in what we see. We'll be here for a while. And so organizations relying on those tools know that they've got them out there. Their traditional end-user tools and the management tools will show them all where they're all installed, but what they can't show them is who is using which one. We have customers with 10, 15, 20, 40 versions of Java, given the structural dependency of those applications. They need those different versions of Java, but they can't identify what they need, where they need, when they need it. And so our tools provide that kind of visibility. And that's really the nature of broadly where the web is today. Even when we look at SaaS applications that are fully embedded in the browser, what one application may need in terms of rights access is different than another. We talk about customers in the medical field. I break my bones and do other things like everybody else. I don't have an X-ray machine at home, so my browser does not need to have the capability to interact with an X-ray or an MRI machine or lab results and those kinds of things, but our customers do. Their browser requirements are very, very different than what you and I have at home. The fact is the browser that we use is the same browser they use. They just need to be able to control and manage it in very, very different ways. And there's no other products really out there, I think, like a browser that are mass manufactured for the consumer market. And that same binary is really the same thing that the enterprise needs. But the way in which it manifests itself is so uniquely different. I think about Microsoft Word. My wife is a romance writer. She uses Word to write manuscripts the same as any enterprise person would use to write research papers. The same Word is the same there. It's doing the same kinds of things. And so they're building one product and it's used really in the same way. The browser is so fundamentally different than Word in that way, in the way those two users would use it in a personal environment and a professional environment. And yet, before we came along and before we're starting to work in this area, the tools out there were designed to solve the same problems for both of those examples, whether the Word user or the browser user, and it just doesn't work.
So how do you make it work then? Because I had the same experience, for example, with Java. I had mandatory applications for my corporate users. One of them, the application was only supporting Java, this version and above, and the other one was a version, this version and below, and the versions did not meet. They were both required. Do you offer solutions? What would you do in that scenario?
I can speak to the specific Java scenario, and hopefully people can understand that it's the same concept that you can abstract out to really anything else. And the scenario you described is exactly the kinds of things we see with our customers, where an older version is needed in one place, a newer version is needed in another, a yet newer version needed for a third application, or security comes in and says, look, we want to restrict Java completely across the estate, and so they want to shut it down every place they can. What our tools will enable you to do, we're going to decouple the natural structure of the browser to load when Java is called, or any component called Reader, Flash, whatever. Whenever it's called, the browser has a file structure path that will load the latest and greatest, the most current version that is set as the default on the system. We can decouple that configuration and get in the way of that call to then say, we need a Java, but we need this specific version. We can, within that same browser, so we're not delivering a new browser, we're not putting new code in the way, we are just instructing the browser to load the proper version at the same time for security reasons and others, isolating that environment off natively with the user session. From the browser standpoint, it has done its job. It was told to load Java, it loaded Java. We just direct to the version that it should be loading and ensure that it does that. This is all part of a larger concept that web applications are, in the enterprise specifically, and very different than Facebook and Twitter and any kind of social media or consumer experiences. Web applications in the enterprise are designed around a business case. And those business cases are specific uses and specific scenarios. And you could have a team in one conference room building one very specific business application, and in the next conference room over, they are equally challenged with building a different business experience that both have to run in the browser. As much as architecture teams work to standardize on technologies and approaches, you've pointed out the experiences that you found, and you're not alone, that they're going to end up relying on versions of Java that are different. The example I was talking about was where those two teams are building those applications at the same day and time. That rarely happens, and so we have different teams over time building things, and they're looking at the problem that they're trying to solve for the business in today's view, and what can I use, what are today's technologies, and they're going to want to solve that problem. And they shouldn't be shackled with what decisions and what problems the company solved in the past. We're going to decouple that and essentially provide silo type of view to let whatever that web application experience is that is required, have that run uniquely, and let the team that designs it not have to worry about interacting with other components. And to the counter of that, if you're a CIO, my version of that is you're not making a bad bet. Whatever technology you choose to adopt today and whatever business application you put into practice today, if something new and better comes along tomorrow, you don't have to do a forklift upgrade or throw this old application out, or they're looking at it a different way. You're not held up from moving the business forward because there's something new you can take advantage of. We allow you to run all of those environments simultaneously at the end user point within the browser without having to recreate multiple environments and running virtualization all over the place. We're doing that in real time at the runtime point by doing this approach to isolation of these applications.
And can it reduce security risk? Because one of the point of there being updated versions of browsers, plugins, whatever, is to patch those holes. So what are you finding there?
Some of our customers spend a lot of time on the security question, so we get it a lot. By isolating out the versions while they are running side by side, we create essentially an air gap. I don't want to get into too much of the security language because there's a lot of nuancing there. But essentially an air gap, certainly between the versions. One way I like to think about it with customers, there's two views you can have in security. There's an outside and an inside view. And from the inside view, if you use your security scanning tools, you would see the versions of Java that exist. But from the outside, you wouldn't. And the reason you wouldn't is we sit in the space between the request for Java and the authorization to present it and load it. And we do that by having an opt-in method that either the business unit or IT defines and controls, and without being on that opt-in list, it can't be loaded. And again, there's some security mechanisms to the way in which we validate and load even our own configuration. There's a bunch of mechanisms that we put in place specifically around the security scenario, but it applies from a compatibility and functional standpoint as well to ensure robustness that prevents unauthorized applications and unknown applications from trying to load legacy components that could be vulnerable. Whether you inadvertently intended to have that happen or just through sort of oversight, we're taking the opt-in approach. So you have to take an intentional act to expose what you would not want exposed. Regardless of the version, even if it's many of our customers, the latest and greatest versions of these controls, inevitably it's software, someone will find a security hole in it. And so we are providing the ability, again, to deliver what you want, where you want, when you want through the range of our tools.
I'm sure folks will probably have questions. First of all, that security piece, I know I would probably have a few more questions if we kept going on. But how would people get in touch with you or find out more about Browsium?
Sure. Invite folks to the website, www.browsium.com. That's BROWSIUM.com. And on Twitter, we're at Browsium. You can find us there, and we'll more than happily provide you any information and have a conversation about what we do and how we can help people solve the challenges they've got with the web-based application in this modern end-user world.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having me. This was a great chat.
I want to thank you so much for listening today. If you love this podcast, Please do share it with your friends and colleagues, and please leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher because it makes a difference for circulation. For the show notes and other great info, enter your email into the mailing list at techleaderstoday.com. Thank you.